Welcome to Routing for Success, the show where we interview today's top logistics professionals, providing them a platform to share their stories and best practices. I'm your host, Emily Blair.
And I'm your host, Jay Kirsch. In today's episode, we interview Michael OByrne. Michael is a former security CEO of a company with over 400 employees, turned self-taught step van mechanic and FedEx operator. In this episode, we learn best practices on effectively communicating with terminal managers, how to save 6 figures a year on maintenance, and how getting your hands dirty can make your business more profitable. I really doubt you're going to want to miss this one.
This episode is brought to you by AP Equipment Financing. AP Equipment Financing can bring you the best deals on step vans, panel vans, cutaways, and more, deliver them straight to your facility, and finance them with low monthly installment options. Click the link in the description to this episode or visit apfinancing.com.
Michael OByrne, welcome to Routing for Success.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming on. I'd love for you to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself. Where do you contract? How long you've been contracting for FedEx? And a little bit about how you got into the business.
And it's a great question. And thanks for having me on. Been there at the Whitsett, North Carolina facility. So it's near Burlington, North Carolina, for just over or coming right up to the second complete year. This will be my third peak. So I feel like I'm a veteran at this point, but I came to it through the wife of a friend of mine, actually, who had found the business and said, hey, I think this is going to be, a hands-off type of thing. And they pay every week. So there's a lot of cash coming in. And man, that sounded really good. So I decided retirement could wait. And obviously, anybody who's in the FedEx business or in this space, contractors, know that it's not a 4 to 6 hour a week kind of deal. It takes a little more time in there.
Were you expecting it to be 4 to 6 hours a week?
Based on my thought processes and the way I had planned to do it, yes. And I mean, frankly, it could be. If I hired out a number of the functions that I or the BCs perform, then I could probably do that. But it got really costly really fast. With maintenance and repairs plus just contracting everything costs more. I said, tag me in, coach. I'm gonna do it myself so that we can, profit more in the business.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's awesome.
Do you think, okay, so if you're a new contractor coming in, do you think that with current prices of FedEx routes, you could still hire everything out and have the margin?
I think it's probably possible, depending on what you purchase and if you purchase it at a good price. But I think it's extremely difficult because of what those prices to purchase routes have gone up to. They're fairly substantial these days. It's not like the old days, and I'm listening to your podcast actually and learning and hearing all these people from the old days, and it was free. And I'm like, man, where was the free for me? I think most of us that do this now, because it is expensive, I think you'd be well suited to either be prepared with someone who's a mechanic or have some mechanic background yourself. The more you can do, obviously, the more you can save. And you want to make sure that those trucks are maintained well, because it's obviously your biggest expense besides payroll.
And Michael, I know this answer because you shared it with us, but I'm going to ask if you'd be willing to share with the audience as well. Can you tell us how much you spent on maintenance for your fleet in the first year?
Way too much. We spent a little over $150,000 in the first 12 months.
Wow.
And, it's a lesson in a number of things. So when we were purchasing the business, we made a couple of visits to the site. We wanted to see what was going on and physically see the trucks. And you still had to kind of do it incognito, though, because you didn't want the employees to know that the business was changing hands, and the owner, until the deal was done, didn't want any of that. So frankly, we didn't get to view most of the trucks. They had allowed them to take them home at the end of the day. And so I would go visit, but they wouldn't be there. So I really didn't have a chance to check in on those trucks and see if they were in good repair. Turns out they were not. I would hear people driving in the station in the morning making the grinding noise of brakes, metal on metal kind of thing. And I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. But yeah, I think back to your question, can it be done? Yes, but I think it's going to be pretty difficult. And most of us that do what we have here, or at least with what we did it through the SBA. And I think a lot of people do. And yeah, I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. I'll put it that way. The SBA they have a place and they do a wonderful job with what they do. But for me, it is all encompassing. Anybody that's ever done anything with the SBA can tell you that they own you. They own your wife, they own your dog, they own your kids. I mean, and that because you're in an industry where literally your contract's up every 2 years. Now you're hoping to stay. And of course, if you do a good job, you will stay, but there's no guarantee. And you spend a lot of money in that purchase. So it's a little bit nerve wracking.
That totally makes sense. And that is nerve wracking. Now, if you were to do it over again, how would you prefer to finance it?
Through a combination of some, down payment or equity from, my partner and myself, and, some bank financing, a combination, a little of both. And while the SBA uses local banks, there's a lot of differences between those two things. Cash flow is good in this business. And, that FedEx is going to pay you on Friday. So you're not worried about that. I mean, the industry I came from, we had to deal with collecting from every customer every month, so their monthly service fees and, all that stuff. And with FedEx, I don't have to do anything. So I really like that. I think if we brought a little capital to the table and we had a bank investor, then that would be a better route. Because you can, based on interest rates and other things, as they go up and they go down, you can refinance and take advantage of lowering rates and all that stuff.
Would you try to mix in seller financing as well?
I mean, I think it's a great idea. It's with the pricing being where it is today, it's a little harder to do. We have talked to a couple of other folks who we'd heard through the grapevine were maybe looking to retire or get out or do something different. And approached that subject and they just really weren't interested. And understandably, if it's $1 million investment, I don't want to necessarily finance that without a substantial down payment, because otherwise, we could come in there, we could do it for 6 months and say the heck with it and leave them holding the bag. So I get it. There's two sides to everything.
When you were going through the process of getting the SBA loan, how long approximately did that take you?
Oh, it seemed like it was 5 years. Like I said, the SBA is very invasive.
Yeah.
And so they wanted every document about everything that you've ever done in your entire life. And so it took about 3 months from beginning and having a conversation initially. Then they requested documents and they were provided, and then just working through the process. It was about 3 months. And I honestly thought it was never going to end. But
And you also
successful.
you also shared that you stood up on November 15th.
Yeah.
Was the length of the time the SBA loan took part of the reason that you got pushed back so close to peak?
Yeah, it was. It was.
Okay.
To consummate the deal. I mean, that wasn't FedEx or our intention. But it was what it was. So, and that was, frankly, that was the last day too. I mean, they weren't like, if we had to push it to the 16th, they said, you're just going to have to wait till after first year. You're going to have to wait till peak is over because we're not going to bring you in December 1st. So November 15th stood up. I would not recommend that to anyone ever. If you have an option, don't stand up and peak, because the new person coming into this and not having any background in it doesn't even understand the lingo. I didn't know what they were even talking about. Everything's in an acronym or a number, and I don't know any of them. So it made that communication very difficult. And I just felt like I was drinking from a fire hose for the first 3 or 4 months.
That's a really brutal time to get onboarded. Now, that is something that I've noticed with FedEx contractors. Everything is an acronym or a number. I don't know most of them. How did you
And
learn? What was that?
I still don't know some of them. So don't
Sure.
feel,
How did you learn so quickly? Because you started November 15th. Okay, that's basically in peak. What did you do?
yeah, it was honestly didn't have a clue what I was supposed to do. I just showed up every day. I had inherited two BCs. And so they were the ones doing the DRO at night. They were scheduling the people on the routes. And I didn't know any of these people other than an initial meeting. And those two BCs were wonderful people. And I, would help them with anything in the world if they asked, but they weren't a good fit for our business. So we had to change that fairly quickly. So now I'm putting BCs in place that don't have any experience. It was a bit messy. Hey, you ask, how did I learn? I just said, okay, I had no choice here. I got to figure this out. And I just started asking a ton of questions. I would suggest to anybody who's new coming to this or thinking about this, talk to other contractors. FedEx has the greatest of intentions with what they do provide to you, but there's some expectation, it seems, that you might know some of it and you don't. So you have to have somebody to ask that you don't look stupid asking to. So I kid, but I asked my coordinators, I asked P&D managers, I asked anybody to listen to me, anything I didn't really just understand. And a lot of the other contractors were more than willing to help. We're not competing with each other. I mean, we have completely different service areas, even though they may be adjacent. He's not getting mine and I'm not getting his. So work with the local contractors and just ask the questions about stuff you don't know or understand.
That's excellent advice. Now, when you got started, I know you mentioned that your BCs were handling the DRO, which is dynamic route optimization software. Did you get in and learn your own DRO at some point, or have you let your BCs handle it?
So they handled it for that initial period. And then when we had to make changes, it was clear to me I was going to have to learn real fast. So we actually called, I knew I didn't know. And while I'm really good with software, I've owned software companies. I'm not a programmer. So, for me, it was a little bit of a challenge. Um, I lost where I was going with that because something popped up on my screen.
That's okay.
You're
Well,
telling us how you learned DRO.
DRO, two ways. Um, I called one of the local DRO experts. I mean, I guess it's someone that works for Route Smart directly, and have them come to our station and meet with me on 2 different occasions. And just told them we really don't know how this thing works, and I just need an initial course on how to make it work at all, and then a little more advanced on how do I divvy up the routes and create sections and things that work a little better. And that was super helpful. Those people were really wonderful to work with, wanting to help. And then after I kind of did it for a little bit, I got in there and redrew everything. Like, all right, we're going to make this my own. And I probably redrew too much, which I think is a hazard for a lot of us. We sometimes think more is more is better when it's really not. But I have turned that back over to the BCs who do it daily now.
By making DRO your own and even going a little bit too far, how much do you think that saved you on your bottom line?
Oh, I mean, I don't know that I could put a dollar amount on it, but it was substantial.
Yeah.
It was really substantial. And I think this is a business where it could be done hands off, as we said, but somebody has to know how to do those things and optimize those routes, because otherwise you're running too many routes to too many places and burning too much gas. You've got extra payroll, trucks, all of the things that go with that. So I think learning that DRO, even if you're not the one doing it, knowing how, and then keeping up with it, because even though we've done it, we still continue to change things from time to time. So, I mean, we started with two companies and are in one now. We combined them, but in that initial phase, those two were separate. So our DROs were separate. I had to do it twice every day, and the areas backed up to one another. So once we were able to bring them all together, we had to redraw stuff because it just didn't make as much sense as it once did. So you got to know what you're doing in there. If you're going to be successful and optimize really what you do every day.
That's definitely the message we've gotten from a number of service providers we've had on. So
And
awesome feedback on that.
DRO is not perfect. I mean,
Is it?
we anybody who's used it knows it's not perfect, but it's a tremendous tool to help you. And I mean, based on historical data, even if you've only got a few weeks, kind of what does every Monday look like? How many stops am I really going to get? All right, well, how many do I want each person to have out of that number? And then how many routes do I need to run? And you want to keep that at the minimum without overworking the people. So the tools that are there are vital. We also use, and I'm sure you'll ask me at some point, but Ground Cloud, which I think is very valuable as well.
What was your experience like when you came in with the transition for your drivers? Coming in as a new owner, were you able to retain your drivers, or what was that experience like?
Yeah, we were very fortunate. We retained quite a number of them. I mean, you always at peak end up basically doubling your workforce. So we came into that process happening. So there were a lot of new people, but a lot of the existing folks, the people that have been around a year, 2 years, 3 years, have stayed on. We have probably 8 or 10 of those people still today. So we're very happy that happened. I mean, my previous business, we had about 400 employees, and a lot of what I did was just go around and work with the employees to figure out what we could do better. So basically, I just went in and having no clue because I had no idea what I was doing. I just tried to be friendly. What can I help with? And I would help them load the truck and ask them questions. And they loved the help. And, we worked together at it. I just kind of got to know them as people and what their interests and concerns were, with the transition. What, if any, fears they might have so that we could squash those. And we've been very fortunate with people.
Now, Michael, you were a CEO of a company that had over 400 employees. How has adapting your management style from having such a large company to moving into FedEx changed?
Yeah, for me, it's just like night and day. When that business started with two people and grew to that. So in that process, we groomed so many wonderful people who took on many of the roles that we were doing. And so I literally almost did, and I kidded about it all the time. I don't know why they paid me because I didn't do anything. I showed up, I talked to people, but I delegated everything else. The complete opposite is the case here, where, I am personally involved in most everything. I don't have anything to do with the payroll, the HR, or paying the bills. My business partner does that. She takes care of it, which makes me happy because I don't want to. And I work with the people all day, every day, and it's firsthand, hand to hand. You're in there every single day, working with and alongside of those folks.
Do most of your days look similar? Do you have a kind of a routine that you get into, or is every day going to be a little bit different?
Um, for the most part, it has become a pretty routine thing. As we talked about earlier, spent a whole lot of money with maintenance in that first year. And it was a lot of the expense was related to the trucks not being great, but it was also because we were using a shop to do it for us. And so for a while, I was working on trucks. I decided I would learn how to do that. I was working on trucks all day, every day. I mean, there was something going on all the time. Now we're at the place where the trucks are in, there's always something, but there's pretty, they run well. We don't have a lot of problems. And so my days are reasonably the same. I go in the morning, I make sure, and, we just check the fluids, check the tires, top things off. even though the driver does a walk around before they start, I don't say I don't trust that, but I don't want to rely upon that. I want to make sure that the tires we're sending out are good. I mean, if there's a flat, I'm the guy going to change it. So I don't want any flat. So we check the tires quite a bit, as you can imagine. After dispatch, there's usually a few things to do, maybe some paperwork and clean up or answer some questions with the QA or the P&D managers. And then honestly, I go home. I'm able to go home. And sometimes a shifter cable will break on a truck, and they call me and go, hey, it won't shift anymore. And I drive out and fix it. But most days are pretty event free. And I'm able to do some day trading or, relaxing or fun stuff.
So, okay. You spent 150 on maintenance in the first 12 months. A lot of that was due to going to a shop. And then you said that you have since taken over the maintenance aspect and acting as your own mechanic. Do you come from a mechanic background? No. How did you approach that?
I spent all that time in the security business. So, I mean, I started in that business when I was 18. So other than working some, high school jobs, I really didn't have any other experience. I did do installations of those systems for a little bit, but it wasn't anything about vehicles. Nothing. Yeah, I mean, I changed my own oil. I had, pulled the tires off. I knew how to change a tire, but I really didn't know that much. Yeah, I just YouTube and Google will tell you just about anything you want to know. There's a video for it. And I mean, seriously, you can put in the year, make, and model and the problem you got, and there's a video. And if you're willing to get in there and try, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? It's broken down already. So you're not going to make it not run. And it started with oil changes and tires and brakes. Then I realized, heck, if I got a tire contract with someone, they would deliver to me wholesale. So I bought a tire machine and we got a shop and, it kind of evolved. Now I'm, if we need a new transmission, I buy it and install it. If we need a new motor, I buy it and install it. I'm not gonna say there's nothing I can't do because there's always some stuff you can't do. But if you can do those things, I think you can figure out most of it.
That's so
That's
impressive.
impressive.
I'm very confident that I could not watch a YouTube video and change a transmission. 100% confidence in that.
I guess, I mean, I've always had a bit of a knack for fixing things, whatever it was. My mother was in the property management business for a number of years. So I lived in apartments and I would do some of the maintenance and they would pay me. And it was, kid money, but it was money. So I would paint, I would fix ACs, I mean, whatever I could. And I guess that maybe helped prepare a little bit. But yeah, you just got to be willing to try. Emily, you can do it. If you want to be an auto mechanic, we can get you in there.
That's okay. I think I'll stick to maybe my desk job. I feel okay about that. But I want to circle back a ways, actually. You had mentioned that when you first started in, you had 2 FedEx contracts and
Yeah.
then combined them. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. So when we were coming into the business we were looking to purchase had grown organically over the years to be a very large portion of or percentage of the hub we were in. And they wanted to split that up, given the fact it was being sold. They actually split it into 3. We bought 2 out of the 3. But we couldn't buy it all as one at a time because the rules they had about the percentage we could obtain in that hub was somewhat lower than where it is today. I don't remember exactly what the number was, but then literally like 6 weeks or maybe 12 weeks at the most. It was within the first 3 months. They changed them and it went up. And I'm like, well, this is just crazy. We have 2 completely separate corporations that we're doing tax returns on. We're doing payroll on. We've got 2 DROs. It's like, this makes no sense. So we went to FedEx and said, hey, we just want to bring these under one agreement. and they were happy to do it. It was less for them to deal with as well. And I thank goodness that we did, because it certainly made things like even putting your name on the side of the truck. I had to make sure that I put the right name on the right truck. And I messed up a time or two. So now I'm pulling vinyl back off the truck because so just having everything in one house definitely makes more sense. But that's why we did it. And I've heard that from a number of people in our hub and in others, that those numbers seem to change from time to time and how big they'll allow you to be. So hopefully they stay kind of where they are right now.
So if they drop it back, do you think you're going to get grandfathered in, or would you have to split it again?
Honestly, it's hard for me to know what they
Yeah.
would do. My expectation would be that they would grandfather it, unless it was some major amount, which it's not. But you never know. I mean, I do know, I've heard many a contractor say, when they've changed these things, that they were too high and they made them sell part of their business. Um, I don't really want to do that. I don't necessarily want to add to it either, but I don't want to make it any less, because our expenses are based on where we are.
And what percentage of the terminal are you?
I think we're at 11% combined. It's 11 point something. I think that 15 was somewhere around the number that they said was the top, and we got a couple of people right there at that. We're a little bit smaller than that, but we're more than happy. We run 18 to 21 routes a day.
So is it your goal to continue to grow, or are you happy where you're at?
If you'd asked me that question 6 months ago, I would have said, we're going to grow. We're absolutely going to grow. There's no question. Today, I'm not sure we're going to grow. Not because it's not a good opportunity or because we don't enjoy it, but because I feel like I'd just be taking on more responsibility, more financial responsibility. And I don't really see, if we added, say, 20% more volume, I don't see how that really translates into that much more profit. I'm sure a little bit, but not 20%. So is it worth it? I'm questioning that right now. Now, I think it's most business people who have ever started or run businesses, growth is fun. So you like growing and bringing in new people. But right now, I would say I'm patting the brakes a little bit. Let's see how this goes for the next couple of years, because I think I've heard on your podcast several times that what they're paying us has definitely gone up and down quite a bit over the last number of years. And we seem to be trending in the better direction for a contractor, but we came in right when it was the worst. We didn't know any better either. So we literally, for the first few months, we were having trouble just breaking even. We were spending too much on trucks, but we just didn't have a great contract. So that's getting better. And I think if that continues to trend that way, then there's some more opportunity for growing, because it would be financial, successful. But if they don't change that very much, and I don't see us growing a whole lot.
So what,
Other than growth.
yeah. Now, what shifted for you in the last 6 months to having the mindset of, okay, it makes sense to grow, and yes, we are going to grow, to I'm happy with where we're at and it doesn't make sense to grow?
My level of involvement.
Oh, in the last 6 months.
Yeah. I mean, I am literally doing all of the maintenance. I mean, the oil changes, the brakes, the tires. I did the inspections with our P&D folks this morning, or our quarterly vehicle inspections. I'm the one doing that with them. So just how much time it's taken me has definitely created a situation where I'm thinking, how much of me is there? I'm not getting any younger, and while none of these young guys can go faster than me, it's okay, but I don't want to. I want to be able to take it a little bit easier, and so growing too much would seem to be a big burden for me.
That makes a lot of sense. Obviously, you've saved the company a lot of money by learning to do your own maintenance. Have there been any other cost saving tips that you could share with others as far as maybe fuel expenses or recruiting costs, things like that that you can think of?
Yes, so do all of them yourself.
Well, that explains why you don't want to grow.
Do it more effectively because you have a genuine interest in like those folks that you're hiring. And so when you're communicating with them, that's important. Um, what was the other thing you mentioned? Was
Fuel?
recruiting. Um, I mean, gas, I've heard that asked a lot. We all have an answer, I guess. We have a Lex card. We can go to any sheets. It'll go anywhere, but we get the best pricing there. And there's a number of those in our service area. So um, that's certainly important. I think that the maintenance obviously is a big expense. And being able, any self-respecting auto shop these days is around 120 bucks an hour. And I'm down for 120 an hour all day. Let's do it. So I'm not paying 120 an hour, but it saves us a tremendous amount of money. Um, I think that as we were talking, being involved in DRO and making sure that you're always looking at how to be better, how to optimize better. And sometimes better doesn't necessarily mean less routes. Um, if all I cared about was the minimum number of routes every day, I'd be working my folks crazy. They don't have too many stops every day. And then they burn out and I'm back into the recruiting thing. So trying to keep your people because it is so costly to hire. And you've got the cost associated with the ad, then your time, then all the first advantage stuff that has to be done. So there's a lot that goes into it. We want to keep the good people that you have. So spend some time there.
So, talking about keeping the good people that you have and driver retention and driver pay, how do you approach that?
So a number of ways. We, like most, or at least most that I talk to, pay by the day. And we do that. My explanation of it is we do that because I don't want to penalize someone for being good. I mean, if you've got 100 stops every day and you come in and you're there early before they're even done with the sort, and you're loading your truck and you leave the minute dispatch happens and you can get back by 1:30, 2 o'clock, good for you. I mean, I think that's a wonderful thing as long as you're doing it safely. You're not driving crazy or something like that. But that's what all of our safety features are for, to make sure that doesn't happen. Um, that's why we do it that way. Now, we also realize that every day's different. Today I might have 80, tomorrow I have 90, the day after I got 110. The middle of the week seems to be heavier volume for most of us than the beginning. And so we pay our people both the daily and then anything over 90 stops, they get paid additional per stop.
Right.
So that way, if you show up and you've got more volume today, you're not bad because I'm getting paid more, as opposed to looking at the guy stacked next to you that looks smaller than yours and going, man, that's not fair. It's done as fairly as you can that way. I also think that having some benefits, I think in a FedEx contracting business, it's hard to have your Fortune 500 type benefits, but you can offer benefits. And we pay for health insurance for our employees. We pay for 100% of it because everyone should have at least basic health care. And that way they're not worried if something happens that they could go to the doctor, their family can go to the doctor. I think that's really important. And they would, pay vacations. I mean, even though they're kind of daily labor, it's the people you want to take care of who are taking care of you. And so every year they get paid vacations and they can use those whenever they want. I actually had a guy the other day said, hey, my year's coming up and I'm going to lose my time. You want to just pay me? Sure, why not? Because he's such a good driver. He's always there for us. He's consistent. He just decided I would rather have the money than the time off. Nothing wrong with that. So we just try to be flexible and understand that people have a life outside of delivery and work with them to make sure that we can make that work. We've got a couple of folks who are in college and a lot of their classes these days are online, so they're able to do that. And then on the days that they don't have classes, they work, and that allows them to earn some income. So we try to be flexible in those ways, that people might work 2, 3, 4 days a week, as opposed to working every single day.
Yeah, a lot of great ideas there. I like that. It brought up another question in my mind about workers' comp, which is a significant cost for service providers. Have you made any adjustments to who you're using for workers' comp? How often do you review that? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, like we said, I came in, didn't know a thing. So I really had no idea what was going on. And whatever FedEx said in terms of who people work with, I went with whoever that was. It was Marsh. Um, that turned out to be a rather expensive proposition. And so, like many, we at the end of that initial term looked for something else, something that made more sense. And so we were actually able to save almost 50%
Wow.
of our workers' comp premium just by moving to someone else. Um, that that's a lot of money, because you're right. Workers' comp is a big part of this. I mean, we're driving. I tell my drivers all the time, we're driving missiles down the road. I mean, these big box trucks going 70 miles an hour. It's got a major corporation's name on it. So, you kind of have to make sure you take care of it. There's a lot of liability there. So that has been a big help for us and savings for us. We did the same with our vehicle insurance, because we just went where they said, and we went with Marsh across the board, whatever it cost. Okay, we didn't know. And, as we got through that first crazy time, and then we, started to learn the business a little better, we started going, wait a minute, with the expense being rash, how do we make a profit? So we had to start looking at all the expenses. What are we spending on vehicles and maintenance and employees and uniforms and all that stuff that, contractors, I don't think when you're getting into business, you think of all those things because you don't know they exist, but there's a lot of little things and ancillary things that you pay for that nobody thinks about.
Did you find that other insurance company were you searching Google? Were you talking to other contractors? How did you find them? Facebook groups?
Some of both. Some of both. I mean, like just asking, hey man, who do you use? Are you still using Marsh? I'm using Marsh, and here's what I pay in it. What I got. And I'm not picking on Marsh. They're wonderful people. My experience was one where I could save money elsewhere. And that's what I heard from other contractors. So that's where I started. Yeah, you do a Google search. And then actually my business partner, who's in that gym business that we had talked about previously, had a member who did insurance. So, somebody that you knew, that you were able to talk to and understood what you were trying to accomplish. And that really helped.
And what's the company name of that?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I think, well, our vehicle insurance is under protective insurance. I'm not sure who the workers' comp is with, if I'm being honest, because I don't pay the bill. Catherine handles all that stuff, and I'm so thankful for that, but I don't even know who it is.
Cool. If we can find it, people listening, we'll put it in the show notes.
Absolutely. I'll get it for you.
Well, I think that kind of wraps up the questions that I had. Jake, do you have any other questions?
I do have one more. So you're putting a lot of effort into maintaining your vehicles right now. And it seems like when something breaks, you fix it. How has that influenced your strategy with buying trucks as well?
Yeah, it's funny because I have at least 3 or 4 I know of that are in the 300,000 mile plus range that run every day.
Wow.
I've got a boatload in the 200,000 range that run every day. But we knew what we found when we got there wasn't great, and that we were going to have to start moving some of those trucks out and bringing newer ones in. So we have started that process. I mean, you're right. I do fix it. Whatever breaks, I fix it. But you sometimes do a cost analysis and say, okay, do I want to spend $3,000 or $4,000 on a transmission for a truck that has 300,000+ miles? Or do I want to invest the same amount of money in a down payment on a new one whose maintenance is going to be covered? So I think the struggle that all of us have is you want to use the trucks that you have as long as you can. Financially, it makes sense as long as they're running properly. If you're having to go out there and tow them all over the place because they're breaking down and, be messing with that. I know when we first started, my first week alone, every day, at least once, sometimes twice, had to take a truck from the station to the person who had broken down and get their truck towed. Um, I think when you get into that, when you start to get into that with a vehicle, that's when it's time to get rid of it. You know, I kid about trucks. I got one that's got 316,000 miles. I just happened to know that because I was looking at it this morning. And that's a lot of miles, but on which part? Because the chassis is probably the only thing that's actually 316,000 miles. It's got a new motor, new transmission. Brakes have obviously been changed numerous times over the years. So it really depends on how good a repair those vehicles are in and how you maintain them as to how long they'll perform for you.
I love it. Michael, do you have anything that you want to share that we haven't touched on yet?
That I want to share. I think I said it, but I think it is worth saying again. Talk to the other contractors. Ask the things that you don't know. Most are more than willing to help you, and it will save you a lot of heartache. I was raised by my mother, and that's what I attribute to me not being the typical male, which will not stop and ask for directions ever. Right? I don't ask anybody. I will stop because I would rather just find out what the answer is than beat my head against the wall trying to figure out or reinvent the wheel. So asking those questions about things you don't know, being transparent about that. Um, when you come in, you want to act like you know what you're doing, but we had no idea. And it was so obvious. There was no point in faking it. That's, I think, the biggest single thing I would say to anyone new is talk to other contractors and other hubs too. And then, there's events that you guys host and that, are more nationally done. Those things I hear, I haven't been to one yet, but I've heard wonderful feedback that you just get to talk shop with people who deal with the same stuff you deal with every day.
That's awesome. That makes so much sense. And I feel like that's a great shift into our final 3 to Thrive questions. So, Michael, what was one of the most worthwhile investments that you've made into your business?
Well, there's two things I would say. So I don't know that answers the question because it's not one. One of them is doing the maintenance or learning to do the maintenance if you're inclined to that, or hiring someone who is, because I think that is one of the largest things you can do to save yourself some money. But it's also a big time savings. Like if I have to drag a vehicle by towing it to a shop and then wait for them to fix it, they're doing it on their timeline, not my timeline. I mean, I'm in the delivery business. I need trucks, so I can't have it sitting too long. I think being able to handle that in your time frame is invaluable. And the other one I would say from an investment standpoint is the money that we spent, and we did it pretty early on, like on month 3. We got involved with Ground Cloud. I saw all of our drivers using their scanner for their navigation. And I guess, that's kind of how FedEx has it set up. And they also give you, KIs that you have to meet with your vetter cameras that you can't look in the scanner. But I'm using it for direction. So what are people doing but looking at the scanner? It just, to me, wasn't a safe way to do it. And it was a bit of they were saying one thing and then another was happening. So with Ground Cloud, we were able to mount some iPads in there on the dashes. It does voice announcements, so don't even have to look at it. I always tell people it's as easy as listening to the lady in the box and follow the directions she gives you. Their mapping program and their routing is extremely good. And I think that investment was well worth it. The industry I was in before, we had developed some apps and our entire business was run on iPads. So for me, that was just a logical thing to do. And it gave me a better sense of the drivers being able to focus on their job, not having to look at a scanner or, trying to hear that little thing tell you what the next turn was. I think that is a very good investment. And there's some other providers out there that do a wonderful job too. We chose Ground Cloud because one of our other contractors in the station was using it. So he kind of told me about what it would do and was very happy with it. So it's talking to other contractors again, right?
Great advice. Question number 2. Oftentimes, failure in business can be our greatest teacher. Do you have a favorite failure and what did you learn?
Um, I knew the 3 to drive was coming. So I thought about this. As you asked the question, something completely different pops into my mind. Well, I'm just going to go with that because I think that was the biggest failure looking back. Certainly maintenance and some other stuff. The way we did that could have been better. It was my involvement or dealing with the folks there at the station. Um, I looked at what was happening because they're bringing us the service sheet each day, and it says you didn't deliver these, you did deliver these. You've got codes, all this kind of stuff, and I don't even know what it means, but they're teaching me, and I was argumentative with them. Like, no, that didn't happen. That's not what really happened. That was a 12. It was left behind, and that was a failure on my part to just understand that we're all in this together. And I thought that they would be more open to suggestions because that's what I do. I see a problem, I try to fix it. And I ask my wife, she will tell you, that's what I do. I ask her now, do you want me to listen or do you want me to help? I don't know which direction to go. Um, but being able to do that, I think, is invaluable. Listening to them and trying to be anything other than adversarial. Having a good relationship, which I didn't start off with a great one. I literally had a couple of times that I had to go over to folks who work there at the station for FedEx and say, hey, I think I was a bit abrupt with you in that conversation, and I'm sorry. I shouldn't act that way. So yeah, that was a big failure. Now things are a whole lot better. We have open dialogue, communication. We're friendly with each other. Hey, they brought me lunch the other day, so they must like me.
Wow. For sure they like you. I have not heard of a terminal manager bringing a contractor lunch before. And also, great bonus tip of asking, do you want me to listen or do you want me to help? I'm going to use that today.
I was going to ask, how long have you been married? Or how long did it take you to learn that? Because that's brilliant.
So that goes back to my mother raising me and
There
my
you
brother.
go.
You learned it from that perspective, and she would explain that. She would tell me. And if she was having a bad day, she'd just say that. I don't need you to do anything. Just listen.
Good.
And it made it much easier. So I just carried that into being married, and yeah, I've had good relations in that area for a long time.
That's brilliant. The last question of the final 3 to thrive in FedEx is, what is your favorite part about being a FedEx contractor?
Man, here we go. There's 2 answers to this one too. There's a couple of things that I like a lot. I actually rather enjoy working on the trucks. It's not something I spent my whole life doing or have tons of experience at, and so for me, it's always something new and a challenge to see if I can fix it or not. I have backup plans when I can't. Yeah. We all fail sometimes, but I actually enjoy doing that work. Sense of accomplishment. You can see something that wasn't working. Now it is working. I did it. Yeah. So that's cool. The other thing, honestly, is just working with the people. If you like people and being around people, um, I think it's just a great place. Um, Working with our folks, kind of understanding what's going on with them, realizing that we're all the same, just in different roles, and trying to help each other.
That's awesome.
I feel like we got bonus answers each time in this Three to Thrive round.
Or
Fantastic, Michael. Well done.
I can't narrow it down to one, so you end up with
What's really unique, Michael, is okay, so you came from being a CEO of a company with over 400 employees, basically in the tech industry. And you then came into FedEx, and instead of being frustrated that it wasn't this hands off 5 hours a week that you were initially sold, you fully embraced it. And now you're the mechanic for your company. And that's what you get the most joy out of, which is such a neat adaptation. And it's something that I don't often see with investors that come from larger companies coming in. And it's incredible. Good job.
well, thank you. It's a work in progress every day. I'm always trying to learn something new. And one of the cool things is once you learn something about one of the trucks, all the rest of them are the same. I mean, it's so you're not relearning about every single vehicle like but your typical auto mechanic shop would. Our vehicles are very specific, and you know, that's that way. I've just always been a doer. Like I don't set well. It's what my wife says. I don't set very well. Like I struggle to watch a movie if it's over an hour because I just don't want to sit for that darn long. There's something that needs to be done. So it was just my thought to jump in there. I don't know that I will always do it, but knowing how is invaluable. I think for even an owner who maybe doesn't do it, having the knowledge means that the people who are doing it aren't telling you stuff you don't know anything about. And you can manage your business better if you've physically done it yourself. I mean, I still go out and run routes occasionally. I've run every single route that we have multiple times. Sometimes out of necessity. During peak, things get crazy. And, sometimes you jump in there and do it. And sometimes just to help somebody out. And I think if you know how to do all those roles, whether you do them or not, it's certainly going to help your business and your understanding of the business when you do delegate those things to someone else.
Michael, so much amazing advice. Thank you, thank you, thank you for agreeing to come on and do the interview with us. We really appreciate your time and your expertise.
Well, I thank you both. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. And I hope somebody out there listening got something out of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Routing for Success is brought to you by AP Equipment Financing. In today's competitive market, it is essential to acquire the right trucks at a fair price and finance them in a way that makes sense for your business. Leveraging their extensive network of truck and van suppliers, the experts at AP Equipment Financing will help you locate the best deals on step vans, cutaways, panel vans, and more. Deliver them straight to your facility and finance them with low monthly installment options. Click the link in the description or visit apfinancing.com for more information. Routing for Success is an independent production of AP Equipment Financing and is in no way affiliated with or endorsed by FedEx Corporation, FedEx Ground, Amazon, or any other logistics company discussed herein. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Routing for Success.
Bye-bye.